Hey there, it's Rob Hatch. Welcome to How I Use That. Today we're going to talk with Tim Desmond, who is the co-founder of teachingtransformations.com. Tim's going to show us and walk us through an app called Workflowy. On How I Use That is we talk with real small business owners and entrepreneurs about the apps that they used to manage their business. And specifically, not to get a tutorial, but to have them show us how they use the app specifically. So let's get started. Hey there, Tim.
Rob, how you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome to How I Use That. As I said in the intro, I'm going to have you show us, I think the app's called Workflowy. And but before we get started, tell us a little bit about teaching transformations, and then you can jump into showing us how you use Workflowy.
Yeah, I'd love to. I feel like I'm on a game show with this title of How I Use That. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Teaching transformations is sort of my third act. I spent 23 years as a classroom teacher, and then I spent the past 10 to 12 as an independent author and publisher. And now I'm turned 50 this year, and I'm sort of looking at the last act, so to speak, of my life and what I want to do with it. And I really want to help people start to think about retirement, and not necessarily how to get there. There's plenty of resources on how to financially get to retirement, but what do you do once you're there? If you have 20 or 30 years, that's a long time to sit on the couch and watch Netflix. So I'm trying to think of ways to help people start planning now about what they could do that's going to give them some meaning and fulfillment once they hit official retirement age. And we're focusing on teachers right now because myself and my partner, we're both in education, but really the principles and the approaches we're talking about will work for anyone who's in their mid 40s to mid 50s.
That's really cool. That's great and smart. I love the idea of, like you said, there's a lot of financial planning apps out there, but the time you're talking about what makes a meaningful life after this, and especially when so many of us sort of make meaning from the work that we do, right? Derive meaning from the work that we do. And if you're a teacher, that clearly you chose that profession for a reason. It gives you most teachers great joy and meaning. So that's really great. I like that. So you're going to talk to us today about Workflowy and how you've managed a couple of, you said this is your third act. So you've done the solo business owner thing for a while now, and there's a lot to it. So tell us about what that looks like. What does Workflowy do for you, and how does it help you keep your stuff together, basically?
Yeah, I'd love to. So let me give you some context so you understand how I use this. I am by nature, I'm pretty cynical when it comes to new apps, because what I find is I get sucked into it, and
yes,
I'm jumping from one app to another as soon as some new shiny object shows up. So it takes a while for me to adopt one into sort of my regular routine. And what I liked about Workflowy is Workflowy does one thing, and that's it. It's all it does. I kind of like the tools that either do everything or one thing. Those are kind of the extremes where I end up. And what Workflowy does is it's a it's an outlining tool. That's all it is. It's simple bullet points, and they've added features, to add images and things, but I use it strictly text-based, hierarchical lists, outlines, or bullet point lists, however you want to describe it. So a few of the features, and I'll explain how I use it. Workflowy is a cloud-based app, so you can use it through any web browser, but then they also have apps for all platforms, so iOS and Android. And it all syncs up to the cloud, and you also have the option to back up your Workflowy cloud space onto Dropbox. And it's just hypertext markup. So even if Workflowy itself went away tomorrow, I would still have all my data in an HTML file that I could, recover if worst case
Nice.
scenario.
That's always the risk, right, of trying out a new
Yes,
app. Like, what if it disappears tomorrow?
that's
And
right. If all your data is trapped in there, or if it's clunky to export it, there's not a lot of peace of mind there.
right.
So I have a laptop, a PC laptop, and an Android. I don't have an Apple device. So I use the Workflowy app on Windows and for Android. And that's important to me because I can move between, like many apps, I can move between the devices, and it's all synced up. So that's the general overview. What I basically use it for is Workflowy is my brainstorming space. Everything starts for me in Workflowy. So if I'm out on a run and I have an idea, I pop open Workflowy and I type a few things in my phone. Or if I have a book idea, or if I have a business idea, or if I have an idea about what I want to do with the backyard garden, like all my ideas start in Workflowy. And then once they either gain traction or don't, then I kind of move them to different places depending on the job and the tool that I need. But everything starts in Workflowy, and I like that because it's sort of a single point of entry for my brain. I just know, like, if I'm ruminating on an idea, I don't ever have to figure out where I put the ideas. I just know they're all in Workflowy.
So how extensive does it get before it gets moved? Like, what, is it just I mean, it's not one thought, clearly, and it helps you organize your thoughts. I mean, looking at maybe the different elements of it. How much time do you spend, let's say post run, you get an idea, you put it there, but how does it support you after that initial capture?
Yeah, great question. I'll give you an example. Do I have it here? Let me see here. Yes. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I found a podcast about people who own laundromats. And I immediately thought, I'm going to own a laundromat. That sounds awesome.
Right.
Right. I mean, why not? Right. So I immediately put down the podcast. I came up with a podcast name, The Spin Cycle. I thought, oh, that'd be a great podcast name.
So cool. Yeah.
I noted an episode of this show and the guy and where he lived. And that was my initial idea. So I thought, okay, that might be a great way of generating some other revenue, is to become a laundromat owner. Mm-hmm. And then, a few weeks later, I figured out that's not a very good idea for me. I want to be location independent. And if you own a laundromat, you kind of have to be there. Like if a water line breaks or what, it's hard. I think it's hard to be a remote owner of a laundromat. So in Workflowy, where I had laundromat, I just marked it as complete and I leave it in my archive. So if at some point I think, oh, wait a minute, no, I have a better idea that'll work for a laundromat, I still have it, but I've designated it as an idea I'm not going to pursue. So everything that's crossed off here is something I've already moved or I'm not going to do, but I leave it crossed off just so I see it in my archive.
I love that. I love that it keeps that history, but also some indication that it's not a priority or it's been resolved on some level.
Exactly.
I also like that you sort of got, as you were sort of thinking this through, because to your point, owning a laundromat is a great idea, but you said it's not a great idea for me because my filter of I want to be, location independent. And so, it hit that filter and you basically crossed it off the list at that point. But it is a great idea to flesh out for a while until you reach whatever filter that is and realizing it wasn't for you. Chris and I have often chatted about, there's lots of great ideas. There's lots of ways to make money. You just have to figure out which ones are right for you. So that's exactly cool that it worked as a thought tool to help you brainstorm, but eventually you hit your own filters.
Right. And this seems counterintuitive and it serves the same purpose, but I use Workflowy to write things down, not because I'm afraid I'm going to forget them, but so I can forget them. Because
interesting. I like that.
I hear, especially in the author community, people will say they keep a little notepad, by their bed. And if they wake up with an idea, they write it down. And I used to do that. And then I would look at it in the morning. It would say something like peanut butter jar on the left. And I'm like, all right, that sounded good at 3 a.m., but it's totally meaningless in the morning.
Right.
But what it does, whenever you write something down, for me anyways, it releases that from my head. So like,
absolutely,
if I'm out on a run and I have an idea, like, and I'm listening to this laundromat podcast and I think I'm going to be the next laundromat mogul, I jot it down in Workflowy, and now my brain goes, okay, you don't have to think about that now. Like, you've captured it, and it releases the idea. So it's a bit, like I said, it's a bit counterintuitive, but I really like this idea of like taking the onus off of my brain, because if once you open those loops mentally, you kind of chase them. And so I'm like, okay, let me capture it and set it aside. And then if it's a good idea, it'll come back, like it'll sit there and I'll look at it whenever I come into Workflow. I'll see my ideas. And if the timing's right, I'll pick it up. And if it's not, I just leave it.
Now, do you organize these ideas and reprioritize them inside of Workflowy at all? For, you mentioned you cross them off so that you can let them go or move them to another place. But while they're still in there, while they're still being fleshed out, talk to me about that process and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I really just I come in and I just add things. With Workflowy, I haven't done this yet, but I could I just drag and drop. I can rearrange these different things. Like this was Russell Brunson's books. I was reading those, and so I was taking notes on the book. And what's cool with Workflowy is you can display as panels or as bullet points. So this is nice. Really cool. I'll show you this from like one that's not as complicated. So here, this subtopic of podcast has two subtopics. Right now they're showing as bullet points. But if I click the little bars and I choose, where is it? Of course, now I don't see it here. Oh, no, I don't see it. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it now. Well,
just when you're looking.
Yeah, well, let me check the Brunson one. Maybe this one will. Yeah.
One of the things, do you have it?
Oh, board. There it is. So it's shown as board.
Yep.
Oh, board or bullets. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, this one is showing as bullets. If I change it to board,
now there we go.
So you can almost do like a Kanban board, or AWL board, something like that, and you can toggle back and forth between board and bullets. So that's so I don't have a ton here. As I get, some are client work, some are random things. But what I do is like the ones that are sort of active, like book ideas. So what's pretty cool here is, like, if you look at this top, I'm at the home of my Workflow, right? If I click on the bullet itself for book ideas, it kicks it out. So now it hides all the other ones, right? And so now if I turn these down, like this is a book idea. So this is the Brogan approach, right? Here's my table of contents.
Yep.
I just sketched out, all right, here's my table of contents. I think I did that for this one too. Yeah. So this is just a table of contents, other ideas. And let's say I only want to be looking at the teaching transformation book. Again, I click that, and now I've got my breadcrumb across the top, but now I'm only seeing that one. So I think you can see how you can start to get granular and stay focused, but then you can always come back up a level or two to the top side of it.
There's a couple of things that I'm noticing. One, just since it works in outline format and it keeps you, I think that supports the idea of focus. And you, as you mentioned, you can sort of drag and drop things, rearrange things a little bit. So I'm imagining in those table of contents, you can reorder them, and think about the flow of each chapter or how you want to organize them that way, or take some section of a chapter and move it somewhere else because it might have a better fit. So that's really cool. And it looks like you've got some hyperlinks in there as well, so that it's, if you wanted to do some deeper linking, you use this mostly for idea capture, but if you wanted to do, in a couple of previous episodes, one with Seth David, who and another with a friend, Paul Sokol, we've been talking about this idea of deep links, that having all the supporting documentation. So if you had a Google Doc, for example, where you had already written out the intro for chapter 1, you could link directly to that Google Doc or some other place to have it all, organized and take you right there so you could work on it some more, flesh it out some more.
Yeah, it's very much like a file system like an operating system for files. That's a
Yes.
great. Yeah, I think that's what you're talking about. So
Yep.
this is a web link, but depending on what I'm working on, I could be linking to a Google Doc. I could be linking to a local Excel spreadsheet on my hard drive.
Yep.
So instead of like flipping through Windows folders and trying to figure it out, if I link to it from Workflowy, it's just right there.
Right, and it's based on your ideas and searchable as well. Am I
Yeah.
right that's eminently searchable for
Yeah,
the types
absolutely.
of
There's a very
clues that you?
powerful search feature. I mean, I am it's there's like a fanatic user base for this. This Workflow's been around for like 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
They would probably be rolling their eyes right now if they watch this, because I am barely using the basics of it. Like, there are people who organize their entire lives with this, like, and they create calendars in it, and like,
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. I'm not that ambitious when it comes to a simple tool, but you know, most of my work is writing or communications based. So this is about as deep as I go in Workflowy. Like, when I get to the point where I have a table of contents for a book idea, my next step would be sending this out. I could export this out and say a Word document or plain text or OPL, and then I can pull that into Scrivener or a Word doc or a Google Doc, and then from there I really start to do the serious writing. So that's why I don't invest in going too deep into the app,
Yeah.
because that's not the function it serves for me. It's just meant to be the open end of the funnel where the ideas come in. Once they gain critical mass, they go somewhere else, or if they die off, they get eliminated.
I love that as another sort of filter for, to your point, you can use this in a myriad ways, and, they may in fact be rolling their eyes if they see this, but that's the point of this show, and talking with you, is how you use this app and what you use it for and what you find valuable. The fact that we could go a dozen different ways makes it valuable to other people. But I like this from the perspective of, you needed a quick place across multiple platforms to capture ideas, because as a small business owner, you said you're on your third, iteration or your third stage of your career, and you've done this many times. You're a man of ideas and a man of communication, and so these come and go all the time, and to have a safe place for them to land, and like you said, free up either the brain space, but also have a record of it to go back to, is really appealing. So I like the simplicity of how you're using that.
Yeah, thanks. It serves me well, and as I mentioned, I have to be careful because you name it, I've tried it. Like Asana, Todoist, Trello. Like, I basically organize my life in Google Calendar.
Yep.
Everything. I do my time blocking there, my appointments there, my clients there, my kids' orthodontist appointments. I have, I have 7 or 8 Google calendars, but I can see them all overlaid on one view. I have,
Same.
I have Acuity synced up to my Google Calendar, so it's impossible for a client to book a time that's already taken on my Google Calendar. So I organize everything in Google Calendar, and Workflowy is about the only other sort of standalone app that I use on a regular basis.
That's really great. And my wife and I just finished sort of our weekly meeting where we review, everything from finances to calendars, and meal planning. And yeah, same thing. Like, there's 8 different calendars, but there's this one family one that we have to keep updated. Otherwise, everything spins out of control. So very important. So any other, things that you've learned about this app that, you could shortcut for someone who's just trying it out, or any recommendations that you have for someone who's just dipping their toe in the water with Workflowy?
Yeah, I think that I would pick one idea or one project and put it in Workflowy as a single bullet point, and then use that as the place where you brainstorm. That's it. Just one thing. And like I said, it could be like, are you going to plant tomatoes or peppers in the north side of your garden? Or it could be like, a big business idea. It could be, a meal plan if you want to get in shape and lose some weight, whatever it happens to be. Just pick one thing. And I think Workflowy is free up until a certain point. So if you pick one thing, you're not going to run out of bullet points, and then just use it. just use it for that one thing until it gets to the point where you're like, okay, now I'm ready to either drop this idea or move it to a different workspace, and see how that works for you.
That's great. I love the temptation with any new app, and this is a common conversation with a lot of folks. One, exactly what you said ahead of time, that there's a bright shiny object that it's hard to avoid or resist that temptation to try out something new. And you listed off all the different apps that you've tried, but there's also this feeling that once you start, you've got to shift everything into it and put everything in it. And I like the idea of testing just one idea right now and see how it works, and not feeling like you have to go all in on this. Is this the one that works better for you than, say, Evernote? This seems like something a lot of people would use Evernote for for this, which is it's an amazing app, but it's also feels quite enormous in all of its capacity compared to something as simple as the way that Workflowy is laid out.
Yes, I would agree with that. I've tried Evernote a couple times. I've used OneNote a number of times in different incarnations, and the temptation is to go all in with those and just move everything over and do everything in there, and that's overwhelming.
It is. So I love the advice to just give it a try. So tell us again a little bit. I want to thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we learn about Workflowy or understand before we head out?
I don't think so. I think it's such a basic, streamlined app that people are either going to try it or not. Like there's not much more to it to get started, and I think that's one of the benefits of it.
Perfect. I love that. So tell us one more time a little bit about Teaching Transformations before we wrap up our show. I want to make sure people check that out.
Yeah, would love it if people want to. If you go to that, there's a simple opt-in page. We are writing a free weekly newsletter. It's a combination of curated resources for people in their 40s and 50s, as well as some more reflective essays. We also have a brand new podcast that we started that comes out once a week. So, we're really being sort of slow and deliberate. There's no product, there's no service. We're gonna create an audience, hopefully, and then ask them what they want us to build when it comes to that point. So, if you are in your late 40s to mid 50s, you're not sure what you're going to do with your time in retirement, and you're thinking ahead a little bit, and you want to start planting some seeds, hopefully we can help you along that path.
Fantastic. Tim Desmond, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me on.